Hey guys, I'm Alex Price, and I'm here to tell you about the article I chose, titled Social Media's Influence on American Sports Journalists' Perception of Gatekeeping, authored by Sada Reed from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and her colleague Kathleen Hanson from the University of Minnesota. Published in the International Journal of Sports Communication in the year 2013. We will begin with the introduction. Modern communication vehicles, especially social media, have opened many doors for expanding communication research on gatekeeping, or the process by which millions of messages that are available are trimmed down and transformed into shaped messages that reach given audiences at different times. As the sports media landscape hasn't been researched much on the advent of social media and since its inception, Reed decided to further previous research conducted by her colleague Hanson, who was one of the first to actually invent this social media research on gatekeeping, especially in the sports field. Reed furthered Hanson's research by answering the research question, do sports journalists perceive that their gatekeeping role has changed since they began using social media as a news gathering tool, and if so, how? To answer this research question, Reed uses Schumacher and Rose's 1996 hierarchy of influences model and its 5 components: individual level influences, media routine, organizational level influences, extra media, and ideological level influences. Further, Reed examined which of the 5 components of the hierarchy of influences do sports journalists feel most influenced by, if any at all. Moving on to the literature review, Reed defined each of the 5 hierarchy of influences. Number 1, the individual gatekeeper has likes, dislikes, ideas, values, beliefs, and other ways of thinking that all impinge on the way he or she shapes a message. Number 2, media routines, ways and patterns of shaping messages while in the workplace. Number 3, organizational level influences. Organizations all have their own priorities to consider when shaping a message to an audience. Number 4, extra media or outside level influences. And number 5, ideological level influences, ways something in society collectively thinks about how they shape a message to each other. So let's move on to the current study and the methodology. Reed sought to answer the research question, how has the level and the use of social media changed sports writers' definition and perception of gatekeeping? So how did she do this? After conducting research and gathering hundreds of sports media press agencies and their writers, 77 participants were selected and narrowed down as the sample participation. All 77 of these participants covered sports professional media, not amateur. Respondents answered a survey question that asked this research question in a yes or no format, so there were 1 of 2 answers. So let's talk about the results. 36 of the 77, or 47.4%, said no. 26, or 34.2%, said yes. 8, or 10.5%, said I don't know. And 6, or 7.9%, claimed that the question was not applicable. 25 of the 26 who did say yes explained why they felt their definition of gatekeeping had changed in an open-ended format of the survey. And their responses were then codified by an outside group to fit 1 of the 5 hierarchy of influences. 13 stated that media level influences were the greatest factor, 8 stated that extra media influences were the greatest factor, and 4 stated that organizational level influences were the greatest factor. So let's move on to the discussion and what it all means. The fact that nearly 50% of the participants stated that they did not feel that social media had changed their perception of gatekeeping and how they shaped messages to their audiences states a fairly strong acceptance percentage among the sports writing field. Basically, they were comfortable with using social media and adapting to it as it needed. They weren't uncomfortable with having to disseminate their information in different ways, which is interesting to me because the fact that social media is considered an extra media level influences, or you would think it's an outside level influence, and most of our participants actually stated that their media level routine influences was the thing that changed the most, or the way they did the work every day. For those 25 respondents who did say that they felt social media had changed their perception of gatekeeping, over half attributed media routine level influences as the main influence, which alludes to the fact that most sports media journalists feel that social media has altered their work routine and processes rather than the ways they actually shape or disseminate the message, which I think is interesting.